Good morning, Bardstown and Nelson County, and welcome to another edition of Bradford and Brooks. Jim Brooks here with my co-host, Margie Bradford. Margie, good morning.
Good morning, Jim.
We have a beautiful Wednesday morning looking at us.
Absolutely.
And temperatures are cool. I think fall has fell.
I think so. Not with a thud yet, but it's coming.
Well, my grass is still growing. And
Yeah.
So-
And the deer are still enjoying my grass.
Are they? Well,
Oh, yeah. They've extended the family. There were 5 back there last night.
Oh, is that right?
From the previous 3. So they probably I don't know if it's the family or if they've invited the neighbors.
Well, the way your property backs up to that, well, I'll call it a holler for
Yeah.
for lack of a better term. But I guess they find a path right to your back door.
They haven't had a bit of trouble finding it.
All right. Before we get started with our continuing series of interviews with political candidates, Rolf Stratton has joined us in the studio. Good morning, Rolf.
Good morning, Jim. I'm back here behind you, so you can watch me in your rear view, not camera, but in this case, monitor. The reason I'm in here very quickly is to make a formal announcement, I guess we would call it, that the 2 candidates for circuit for Nelson County Judge Executive have agreed to join us for a debate on October 12th. Mm-hmm. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's 6 o'clock. We're going to be at the Civic Center down on South 3rd Street. Stan Mullins, who many people in our listening area know and have known for years, will be the moderator of this. Stan does several of these over in his home communities in Hardin County. And Stan will be doing that. We'll be bringing in a Hardin County timekeeper, too, I'm told. But each candidate will be given an opportunity for opening statements, answer questions, have a little rebuttal, and closing statements. Now, the event will be on, as we said, Wednesday night at the Civic Center, October 12th. The other candidates that are on the ballot are welcome to be there, and we will have tables available for them around and in the Civic Center. Mm-hmm. Now, there will not be a speaking opportunity on the stage but we will probably open those doors at, I'd say 5:30 at least. Mm-hmm. And we will close the doors when the last person leaves. So we'll have our 2 candidates for Judge Executive on the stage to do the questions, and we invite candidates for certified candidates that are on the ballot for office to come and be there. We will not put names and placards on those tables. They'll just be random, so it would be candidates would bring their own materials and whatever they would like, and they would get enough space.
So when does the debate start? If the doors open at 5:30?
5:30. We'll start at 6 o'clock, and it will be a live audience. We encourage people to attend. Mm-hmm. However, there will be alternate means to see and view it, and that would be through the radio, quite obviously, WBRT's products. Also, we will be having it on Facebook.
Live stream.
And if everything clicks right, it'll also be on Bardstown Cable Channel 19. Basically, we'll be rebroadcasting the live stream. So, multiple ways to see it, but we certainly would like the people. All the questions will be asked from the moderator, not any questions from the audience. So that's just to let you know. And you'll be hearing a lot more about that, seeing a lot more about that as we move forward. But opportunity to hear from the 2 candidates in this very important election.
Oh, yeah. Well, Rolf, the other candidates who want to, hand out their literature or just meet and greet, those tables are on a first-come, first-served basis?
Yes, but we hope to have adequate numbers we'll kind of make a polling or we'll make some contacts before so that we'll make sure. But there's plenty of room in the Civic Center. Yeah. Now, you may be sitting next to somebody, but something that Stan has recommended that they've done actually in Hardin County, and we're taking his cue on that one. So I'll be quiet, let our candidate get his time, and I'll move out. And again, you'll be hearing more about October 12th, 6 o'clock, Civic Center, Bardstown.
All right. Well, thank you, Rolf, and I look forward to that. that event, and we welcome audience members to attend. And you'll get more than your bang for your buck with just the judge executive.
Yes,
you can talk to the other candidates on the ballot that want to attend as well. So it'll be should be an interesting event, and hear the candidates square off against each other again. All right, well, Margie, let's introduce our guests. As I said, we're continuing our interviews with candidates who are going to be on the November ballot, and the time is clicking away.
It is.
What are we, less than 6 weeks away? Yeah.
Something like that.
41 days, I think.
Yeah.
41,
So
40.
anyway, the man in the
Coming a lot quicker than I thought it would.
the man in the hot seat today with Jim and Margie is a candidate for Property Valuation Administrator, PVA, and you have undoubtedly seen his signs everywhere, J for PVA. And and we have that J with us, Jason Williams. Good morning.
Good morning. And I just want to say thank you both for having me here today. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for coming in. And also, I've never run for office, but I have tremendous respect for anybody who does, because it's not an easy task, I think.
No. A very emotional roller coaster, I would say that.
Right.
Definitely.
Right, and the race you're in is a little unusual because it's one of the few that requires some sort of test or prerequisite.
Correct, right.
And because you had to take the state test for PVAs before you could even file as a candidate. Is that right?
That's correct. It's usually in November, the year before. And so last November, and in fact, you go back 4 years, you have to actually apply online and to take the test. But 4 years ago, I actually applied, but I didn't actually show up to take it. I was going through, my father passed away at that time. But this year, I kept going back and forth. Do I take it? Do I not? And I'm like, let's just go do it, see what happens. And I'm glad I did. Fortunately, I passed on the first try. So here I am.
All right. Well, tell our listeners a little bit about. We've all seen your yard signs and the bigger signs and ads on social media or internet and in the newspaper. Tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and the qualifications you bring to and what led you to desire to run for PVA.
Well, I'm originally from Glasgow, Kentucky. I lived there all my life. And I grew up in the carpet business. My family had several carpet stores. And long in the 90s, when I sold carpet, I didn't install carpet or anything like that. I sold, we had several carpet stores and wound up, I think, about 7-9 carpet installers. And I would oversee them as well. Now, I enjoyed figuring up the houses, figuring up how much square footage, figuring up what it's going to cost, and dealing with the customers, because it's all about customer service. I've been in sales my whole adult life, and I just enjoy that. Now, probably around 96, 97, I went ahead and took class for real estate exam, finished that, and passed the real estate exam. I was in real estate for a short stint. And then in 2003, we moved here, my wife and I and our daughter. Our daughter graduated Thomas Nelson, and she is now married, and she has our first grandchild, Mavis Rose. Very excited about that. As far as I'm glad you asked about experience and whatnot. Again, real estate, seeing construction all my life. But on top of that, one of the things that I think is a misconception about this is that, let's say November 8th, I were to win the election. Swearing in is December 5th, if I'm not mistaken. It's the first Monday of December. That very first day, I'll go down to the office and I'll introduce myself. There's nobody's going to leave, as far as I'm concerned. Those people that work there now are assets.
Sure.
And that is one of the best things to help with this transition from one administration to the next.
Sure.
Also, day 2 is December 6th. That Tuesday, there's a conference. Well, all the freshman class of PVA gets to go to Bowling Green this year, and classes start, boom, right off the bat. So as far as the actual PVA, no. But there is a very good support system with the PVA Association of Kentucky. And one of the things I found out over the summer, because I have actually tried to go out, I called Frankfurt and said, hey, look, I see that some people have got these PVA classes. I'd like to take one. I'm sorry, you can't. You don't work for PVA at all, even a part-timer. If you work for PVA, you may take the class. But if you want to take the class on your own to get ahead, you cannot.
That's unusual.
Yeah.
All right. So you bring a lot of business background
Correct. Yeah.
and the real estate knowledge.
Yes.
The now I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think since the CARE Act in 1990, the PVA is required to value properties at 100% of
Correct.
cash value.
Yeah.
And you may have heard this from other people, I've had some problems with how that's enacted here in Nelson County.
Mm-hmm.
The property value on my house stayed the same for 12 years. And
Got overlooked.
well, that overlook happens a lot.
Yeah.
A couple of years, I guess it's probably been 4 or 5 years ago, maybe further, one of the magistrates that represents the southern end of the county, he was besieged with calls because people got letters that the value on their property had gone up.
Right.
Well, some of those properties had not been reevaluated, or their property value hadn't changed. They might have been assessed, because I don't know they weren't,
Right.
but for more than a decade. They were in the same boat I'm in, and my property value increased by 50%.
Ouch.
One night, one day, from one to the next. And I think, and I will tell you, and I'm convinced that the state law requires 100% of cash value, and I think that actually leaving it the same as it did actually violated state law, or at least the spirit of the law.
Right.
And I would now I don't mind paying taxes, but I think that should have been an incremental increase in my case. It should have crept up, so much every 3 or 4 years. I think they're supposed to assess every
Like 4 years. That's correct. Yeah.
I wouldn't have minded seeing a couple of increases, but to see that increase jump like that.
They should have been able to work with you.
Of course, it could have been said, well, you skated by for.
But I'm not in charge of the assessments.
No, I know,
Right.
but I'm just making the comment that, yeah, I mean,
So I wonder who
probably
was
ended
skating.
up at the same place. It just,
But,
it was a parachute jump rather than a climb down the stairs.
and the PVA at the time actually appeared before fiscal court, and I've got that on video, and I didn't find their explanation satisfactory. Because I still think state law, the requirement of 100% cash value
Right.
reigns supreme, because if you don't do that, I think you're shorting all those entities that get taxed,
Right.
who get tax revenue. If your properties aren't properly assessed, you're cheating them out of revenue they deserve. Now, again, I don't relish paying taxes, but I want to pay what I owe.
Yeah.
And I particularly don't like getting a huge increase from
You
what.
don't like
after-
surprises. So.
Right.
Yeah, that
Right.
would have been shocking to
Yeah,
me. I
yes.
mean, and again, I'm like you. It should be a gradual something worked out, because did you go to the board to discuss it, or
No,
take the time to do that?
I've done that once in the past, and again, that wasn't very satisfactory. It was pretty much, well, I felt like it was like, well, that's nice of you to appeal it, but it is
Right.
what it is.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's something that should have been done on a graduating basis, and I don't see why you couldn't have done that, or they could have done that.
Yeah. What do you know what the state regulations are regarding appraisal of property?
Yes,
What rules?
fair market.
What rules?
Fair market value, KRS 132. is the state rules and regulations for that. But Frankfurt's always about fair market value.
Well, how do they determine fair market value?
There's about 5 different formulas for that. Cash value. Also, there are some others, including like farmland for if you're going to build a subdivision. They determine that. And I'm trying to think the KRS number. I think it was 132,310.
Is comparable sales?
Right. You also have comparable sales, your comps and whatnot. But yeah, there are several different ones that you can use to actually come up with that value.
So what would you do differently if you were PVA? What would you do differently than what's going on right now?
Well, one, what we have in the PVA office right now is to me, a very partisan office. It's been very partisan because over 80 years, there's never been a different party other than Democrat to hold the office.
Well, that's been true of almost all the offices. I mean, it was prevailing political climate.
Right. And a lot of times when you were growing up and you got to that age where you started to vote, you had to register Democrat. You did not register Republican. You didn't vote if you did register Republican because nobody ran. But now times have changed and things are different now. And that's one of the things I think when you have my opponent in office making the comment that, 10 years ago I was asked, my people have come up and told my wife, said, this is not how it works. And that's not right. And look at the race in Judge Executive right now. A non-candidate got actually appointed. Now that's the way it should be. You know, we shouldn't be using the office to influence an election.
Right. Right, because I guess by doing that, then the person actually becomes an incumbent.
Exactly. And then they have the advantage of the election.
Right.
And it's happened the past 2 administrations. Back in 97, when Barbara took the test in 97, and she actually passed it, along with Joseph Masterson at that time, both Democrats. Harold retired, got her into office. Paul Patton appointed her in that same month, November of 97, because she had an incumbent in the primary of 98. I mean, not incumbent, had a challenger in 98 in the primary. But she was made the incumbent for that. Obviously, she won. The next time we had a general, the next time was this year. Barbara retires, and Annie Brashear appoints my opponent. And so here we go again. But again, it was an agreement that happened 10 years ago. You know, and that I don't feel is we need to take that away from this office.
All right.
I don't believe that's the first time that's happened.
Oh no, I agree with you there.
And I don't believe it's that one party can claim that over another. So.
It happens all over the state, but it happens a lot with PVA because PVA is always on the back burner. Nobody really thinks about PVA unless you have to go down there.
Right,
and it takes specialized knowledge.
Right.
Or at least knowledge of passing a test.
Right.
You know, because you can't wait to the last minute and apply for PVA.
No. And that test is probably 20% definition, about 80% math. And it's a tough test. It took me about 3.5 hours.
Wow. Was it timed or not?
Oh, yeah, timed. Yeah, you had to take, I think it was either 3 hours and 45 minutes, something like that was the time. But
what would you do differently if you were there? If you were in office, that's what I'm trying to
I'm sorry.
Yes.
I didn't answer that.
You're right.
Well, for one, Homestead Act, okay. So we have that, and a lot of PVA offices, I went to one over the summer and spent 2 days with them. And one of the things that they do is to get the person off of the Homestead Act upon death, the PVAs will actually look in obituaries and things like that and say, okay, we need to remove that person because unfortunately they passed away. But the opposite, let's take a postcard, send them out to people that have their birth year. You know, when they turn 65, let's give them a card and say, hey, just a reminder, this is your year that you can file for Homestead Act. But it's not just the people that turn 65, also disabled people as well. But our ironic thing about it is veterans, I think disabled veterans in a lot of states that are around us, they'll get completely free they don't have to pay property taxes, whereas we still have that, well, unless they're a disabled veteran.
Right.
Well, I mean, can that be changed on a local level?
No, that would have to be through
Right.
the KRS.
Right.
Now, another thing, in fact, just this morning I tried to look up the website. We don't have a website. I tried to find what time our PVA office is open. I couldn't find that as well. You can Google it right now. I can't find it. So we don't have any presence. There's no, we have candidates that are on Facebook.
Right.
But I think we need to continue at least with some sort of, once I'm in office, instead of vote for PVHA, I can be, rather, I said it backwards, vote J for PVA, I could be PVAJ. So I think we need to continue with something so that way we have communication between us and the people of Nelson County.
Right. Well, and now, of course, with social media, websites have changed, but they're not, they haven't gone away because they're still points of contact. If somebody wants some information, like you said, office hours,
Right.
or other information about how to do that. A lot of times you can download the form, like county clerk's office. If you want to renew personalized tags, you can download the form to do that. If you and other things. So
Voter registration.
yeah, exactly. Well, Jay, I think we need to take a commercial break.
Okay.
All right, you're listening to Bradford and Brooks and our special interview with Jay Williams, Jay for PVA. He's on the November ballot running for Property Valuation Administrator. We'll be right back after these messages. Please stay tuned. All right, you're back with Bradford and Brooks here on WBRT. It is 20 minutes before the hour, and Margie and I have our latest candidate on the hot seat here in the studio, Mr. Jay Williams. Jay is the Republican candidate for Property Valuation Administrator, and I'm sure you've seen his signs around town or his newspaper advertising. Jay, you're just about everywhere, it seems.
I like to think so anyway. There's still, I could use some more signs, but I'm not going to do Justin and by that many.
So there's no semi-truck sign in your future?
No.
Okay.
No, I'm going to pass on the semi-truck.
All right.
Jay, do you think that the property owners have sufficient recourse to challenge real estate appraisals by the PVA? And if not, what would you do to ameliorate that?
Well, I think that, having an open door is the main thing, and being able to sit down and discuss and say, okay, this is how I came up with your particular assessment. This is how I came up with that. But also, if you can't come to a meeting of the minds, so to speak, on that assessment and say, okay, if you want to take this to the next level, let's do that. Let me walk you through on taking it to the appeal board, and then we start following that and helping them as much as possible. Again, they're still a citizen of Nelson County, and I work for them. So if they don't agree with what I do or what I say, then there isn't an appropriate way of challenging that. And I'm still here to help them through that as well.
Well, Jay,
Again, that's customer service.
Like I said, I participated in an appeal once, but the question came to mind, is there a level beyond the local board?
Of course, there's state as well.
Oh, you can. So you can,
Right.
if you don't get the outcome you want, you can.
Right. I think it's a little bit more in depth, and you may, I can't remember if it's an attorney, you may still be able to represent, but it is on a state board as well.
All right. Now, if elected PVA, is there anything in particular you would like to do differently than is being done now or has been done in the past?
Well, again, we need to have good conservative leadership in there. Take the blinders off and see what needs to be done. Just like the postcard for the Homestead Act. It's never been done, as far as I know. I mean, you guys may know more about that than I do. I never heard of it and haven't. But that's one of the things that needs to be done. When you have the same political party holding an office for so long, and it's more of a hand-me-down administration, it's time to take the blinders off and let's see what we really can do and what we really need to do. And that's really what my administration is going to be about. What can we do different? But we have to make an assessment of what we do have and where we need to go.
Well, now you've said already that if elected, you don't plan to clean house.
No.
That
no.
you understand that the people who are working in that office are really your greatest asset.
Exactly. Yeah, they are, and they will continue to be able to work there as long as they like. I have no problem with that whatsoever.
Okay. You said you visited other PVA offices?
Yes, I did. I visited another PVA office and worked with an individual there all day, and actually I worked with also the PVA at that particular location as well. Spent a lot of time, and they were very welcoming, but it was very interesting and opened my eyes to exactly what a PVA office does do. Got me up to speed, which I would like to have taken one of the courses that the Kentucky PVA actually has, but unfortunately you're not allowed to do that.
Now, who's now I know that the Secretary of State is kind of the cabinet office over like the county clerk's offices. What state level office is the PVA fall
No,
under?
Kentucky Revenue. It falls under
Okay.
Kentucky Revenue. And they'll send out a field rep ever so often to ensure that you're up to par in what you need to be doing. Kind of like a supervisor, sort of. But again, if there's something inappropriate going on, there's a different way of addressing that. But yeah, it would be Kentucky Revenue that oversees all PVAs.
Okay. All right. What do you think makes you different from your opponent?
Well, there's been very few Republicans to actually challenge this office.
Right.
Since 1964, there's only been two of us, myself and Donna.
Wow.
Donna was in 2014, and of course myself. That's one of the things. I feel bringing a new perspective to this office is probably the most important thing that we need to do right now. With everything that's happening, we have never experienced what we've experienced over the past 2 years, ever. Last year, car values going up on used cars. I mean, who would have thought that?
Right.
So with that, I feel, these are challenging times, and there could be a possible they'll do away with the barrel tax, and if they do away with that barrel tax, that's going to short us on some monies for the schools. If the schools decide to consolidate, well, there may be some property taxes raised on that. If they decide to remodel the schools instead of consolidate, well, it might be some more, property taxes on that. So it's going to be a challenging 4 years, and I do feel that we need a good conservative leadership in this office, which we've never had in the past.
What do you define as conservative leadership?
Well,
I mean, it seems pretty conservative already.
well, I don't know if she's a conservative Republican or not. But,
You're referring to a political thing.
well, what I'm referring to is actually keeping this. Well, assessments have to be at 100%, but keeping fair and consistent across the board, and good conservative leadership with that, and I will stick by that. And I feel that there are some things that we can do that are different, and there may be some things unforeseen right now that I don't know about that we could do different, and we should do different.
Jay, have you ever used the PVA website where you can subscribe and then you can look at like the property card for properties around Nelson County?
I'm not subscribed to that.
Okay.
No. But I do know what you're talking about. And,
Right.
And I think some other counties actually has more of an in-depth a little bit, I think.
Well, my wife and I for years have been kind of tire kickers with the real estate.
Okay.
We see a house on the market, so and I generally keep a subscription
Oh.
sometimes I'll let it lapse, but more months than not, I subscribe just to find out the details on a piece of property we look at. But one of the problems, or one of the, it's not really a problem. It just, there's things that happen and it irks you.
Right.
The website, at least the public website, doesn't get updated when sales happen.
Gotcha.
I guess it's been more than 2 years ago. My sister-in-law and our sons bought a tract of land out across from where my wife grew up. Well, that doesn't show up on the PVA website as a separate tract.
Huh.
It never has,
Interesting.
even though it does. There's no boundary connected, on the map with that record.
Okay.
If I search by name, the record is there, but the map, there's no, mapping there that shows
Right.
you where it's at.
So
Now-
what would that indicate? That you need some way of connecting them?
And that's
Yeah.
what I'm guessing.
Right now, when I went to the PVA office that I spent time at, there was a guy that did splits. He would take a deed and that had sold, whether it was a split off from another piece of property or not. He would have to go in and put that into the system himself, and also put the mapping and everything together. So that way everything would be right there. And it might have been just something that somebody overlooked on that
Right.
particular property. But I understand, because it's a very inner web of files when it comes to PVA office, all the different files and
Right.
the mapping and
Right,
the
yeah.
deeds.
And in this instance, it had been a division of a farm.
Right.
And
Right.
so a couple of the tracks showed up, but not all the different tracks on the farm didn't show up.
Well, just think, here in the next couple of years, we're going to be, PVA will have to deal with that because the state's building 150, making it wider, buying all that property up. So that property's got to be split off and become state instead of your personal property anymore.
Right.
So that's going to be taken off your assessment. So it's going to be a lot of work.
All right, so if you're elected, you're not making wholesale changes in the office.
No, again, I'm going to continue with the same people we have, evaluate the situation, establish a rapport with them, and move forward. There's no sense in going there hot-headed. That's just not how I do things.
Right. Well, I've heard candidates in other races kind of talk about cleaning house, and I always think for an elected official, it's a mistake
Oh my gosh!
to to replace key people who have institutional knowledge.
Right.
It cannot be replaced.
Right, and you need those people for transition.
Now, you had mentioned before the show that in your business work that you had been analyzing, been very analytical.
Right, I worked at Barton's in the lab.
Yeah.
I was in quality assurance in bottling, and also I did distillery. We had to do quite a few tests. Anything that came into the factory, I had to test proof, clarity, color, and also taste. And also distillery, making sure that we're making alcohol when we do the mash. But it was very analytical, a lot of numbers, and again, which was right up my alley because of the carpet business. Having to figure a 3,000 square foot house, how the carpet's going to run because it's got a grain, having to do all that. So I'm very comfortable with numbers.
Okay, well, I would say in this position, you better be.
Yeah, exactly.
You or somebody working under you should
Yeah.
be have a good mind with math or what other calculations are needed.
Well, at the time I was 52 when I took the PVA test. So for a 52-year-old to go in and take a test and pass it on the first try, that to me I think is accomplishment. Because, to be quite honest, testing is not my best, but fortunately I was able to pass the test.
All right, Jay. Well, Margie, before we close, did you have any announcements or anything? I know that the Republican Women's Group, the Democrat.
Bite your tongue.
The Democratic Women's Group
Yes.
is having a presentation tomorrow night at the library.
Yes, and it's a very important one because it has to do with the 2 constitutional amendments which are on the ballot this time. And unfortunately, in races, when they're talking about the ballots and talking about the election coming up, the constitutional amendments sort of get short shrift.
Right.
So voters are ending up not really knowing what those are and what they portend, what would happen when those are passed. So the Democratic Women's Club has some informed speakers to talk about this and to help inform the public. Everyone is invited to discuss what these 2 amendments would do or not do.
Right. Now, one of the amendments is regarding a constitutional amendment regarding abortion rights in Kentucky.
Well, it really has to do with more than that, but yes, that is a key element.
And what's the second one?
The other one would give the legislature the ability to call into session whenever they like.
Oh, okay.
So which sort of upsets the balance of power as far as in my opinion, my humble opinion. But yes, that would give them the right to call themselves into session whenever
Regardless
like
of
right
what
now. Regardless,
of what they
right now that only the governor has that.
Right.
Has that right.
Right. And, that kind of seems to make sense, to leave it with the governor. But of course, even if he were to call a special session, if they don't go into it knowing what change they're going to make, they waste their time in Frankfurt.
Right.
So it pays to.
Right. Well, we elect the governor. I mean, our system of government is designed to have a balance of powers.
Right.
And you can't run a state or any other thing by just consensus of opinion at that time. You have to have somebody who's in charge.
Right.
And so we elect the governor to lead the state. Now, and of course, then you have all of your representatives and your senators to work together with the governor to do that. So if you give the legislature the ability to call themselves into session whenever they want to, you've diminished that power.
Right.
The governor no longer has the ability to really lead.
Right. Well,
And when they're in regular session, and they still have the ability to do what they think is best.
Right. Well, I tell you, Margie, in our lifetimes, we have seen the power of the legislature, the power of the governor go from tremendous down to.
Right.
The governor has much less authority.
Oh,
and power than
absolutely,
he
yeah.
did.
Well, yeah.
Our legislatures over the years have become very independent.
Right. It has been.
Especially from the days when the Ford sent them a budget and said, pass that,
Yes. Well, moderation in all things, Jim. Moderation in all things.
Well, that's true. That's true. I still get irked at the this backfilled, smoke-filled rooms that deals happen in at the last minute.
And those bills that get passed with little or no discussion.
Right.
So.
Agreed.
And you have often said, remember, you believe in divided government.
Right.
So I'm assuming you're going to vote no on this amendment.
Yeah. Well, probably so. Yeah. Yeah. I don't. It's expensive to. I think the governor's there for a reason, for leadership.
Right.
So I hate to see that power lost.
And it's most important in hard times. When it's hard.
All right. Jay, before we've got a couple minutes left, any last words for our WBRT audience before we go off the air?
I would say like I told my wife earlier today, and she goes, "You need to use that as a tagline." Well, if you want to change, get out and vote. If you want to make a difference, run for office. And I firmly believe that. I never was the type of person to run for office. I've always enjoyed politics, talking about it, but actually running for office, I'd never thought about it. I daydream maybe, but I'm glad I did, and I'm very much enjoying it. And I think we do need to take the blinders off and take a very good look at the PVA office. So remember, in November, vote J for PVA.
All right, Jay. Well, thank you, and thanks for taking time to come in today. And thanks for throwing your hat in the ring. There's just not been a lot of. You're the first Republican since.
Donna, that was 2014.
Yeah,
and then before that was 1964.
Yeah. So anyway, we appreciate all our candidates of both parties, because I think all of them will tell you that the first-time candidates will tell you that it's quite an experience.
No, most definitely, most definitely.
All right, Margie, anything else you want to add?
No.
All righty. Well,
just to encourage people to attend.
yeah, that's tomorrow night at this public library, 6 o'clock.
6 o'clock.
A discussion about women's rights in the Kentucky Constitution and the two amendments that are on the ballot and that aren't very well explained. All right,
Not explained at all, really.
Right. Well, thanks for listening. Margie and I will be back next week. And who's our candidate?
Tracey Bonzo.
Tracey Bonzo will join us. All right. We'll see you next week.